Welcome to one of the most listened to music news podcasts in the world, SGNP, with your host, Darren Sutherland. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, artists, and entertainers about their faith, family, and careers. This is information you will not find anywhere else on radio, web, or in a magazine, but only firsthand on SGNP.
Right after we got our pictures taken for a new picture, I changed my hairstyle. And, I just didn't even think about it. And so when I walked on the bus and I had a little bit of a different hairstyle, he said, thanks for ruining our new pictures that we just had made that I spent $1,000 on.
And welcome back to Southern Gospel News Podcast. Darren Sutherland here with my co-host Arthur Rice. Right after the introduction of our show today, you heard a little bit of music from around 1951, 1952. Bill Shaw, right after he graduated he left Anderson University or Anderson College at the time, and was with the All-American Quartet. Then he left there and spent years and years with the Blackwood Brothers, 22 years. So we'll be talking to Jeff Turner later today. He's a member of the Southern Gospel Music Association Hall of Fame. So we'll talk to Arthur a little bit about that. We've got Scott Fowler coming on for a great interview today. So a lot of great information about George and Glenn and Roger Bennett and all that kind of good stuff. And we got a big day, Arthur. We're talking about more Hall of Famers today than I think ever before, and we've done a Hall of Fame show before, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Bill Shaw, Arthur.
Great guy. Not just a great singer, just a great guy. He's one of the good guys.
When we mentioned that, I guess one of my biggest regrets in life is we had Bill scheduled to do an interview this month before he had his medical downturn, so to speak. Yeah. And he was coherent, and we'll be talking to Buddy Burton later in the show today. And Buddy's going to tell us about his last moments up with Bill at hospice and give us more information. But, Arthur, we also, in this show, we talked to Scott Fowler. And Scott's been a friend of yours for a long time. And one of the things, you've similarly to Scott, if that's a word, similarly, I'd hate to have to spell it, but very similar to Scott, you've came to groups and had to fill some big shoes. And Scott, when he went to the cathedrals, had to fill some big shoes in Mark Trammell. And then, rode the bus with George and Glenn for years, and then faced the untimely death of your good friend Roger Bennett, but yet Legacy 5 has stayed consistent and kept on through the years. What's some of your thoughts on Scott?
Yeah, they really have. I got to know Scott back when he was with the Sound, but even before he went with the Cathedrals, and you're exactly right. When he went with Cathedrals, boy, there's some big old shoes to fill. And he did a just fantastic job, and doing that. I mean, he became his own identity, and people loved him, and that was the people accepted him when he first when he came to the cathedral. That's always a hard thing to do. A lot of times when you've got somebody as popular as Mark and it really is a rough road to hoe, as my dad would say. But he did a great job, and people just accepted him and with open arms. And he's done a great job. And Legacy 5, I'm telling you, he's had a great group. He and Roger kind of put that together. And
I'm gonna stop you right there talking about Scott, Arthur, for just a second, because we got to pay some bills because we got so much to cover today. We'll come right back with Buddy Burton talking about his visit with Bill Shaw. Then we'll hear historian Jeff Turner talk a little bit about the history of Legacy 5 and Bill Shaw and the cathedrals and all that good stuff. We'll even talk some about the Weatherfords. Then we'll take that interview with Scott Fowler. Then you and I, Arthur, will come back and close the show right here on SGNP.
Hey, cousins, this is your pal, Country Radio Hall of Fame DJ Moby, and you're listening to my buddy Darren Sutherland on SGNP. Yeah, baby.
SGNP, we're reaching all across the world now. I was looking at our download numbers the other day, and Norway, Sweden, Finland, over 2,000 people in the month of September have listened to us in Ireland. And who makes that possible? MyPillow. That's right, MyPillow. And right now, MyPillow's got a great offer for you. It's buy one, get one free when you use the code SGNP. Man, don't that sound good? Buy one, get one free when you use the code SGNP. Call them today, 1-800-544-8939, 1-800-544-8939. Tell them the code SGNP. Get buy one, get one free on their premium pillows. It's that simple. Thank MyPillow when you're calling for supporting gospel music and SGNP.
Hi, this is Taranda. What's wrong with living right anyway?
And welcome back to SGNP. Darren Sutherland here. Got a special guest on the line today. And a lot of you fans out there know this. But the legendary tenor for the Blackwood Brothers, 21, 22 years, Bill Shaw passed away recently. And one of Bill's best friends on this earth, this side of earth, at this point, and one of the few singers that sang with Bill and knew Bill real well, is Buddy Burton. Buddy serves right now as the associate pastor of First Baptist Church, Gibsonton, Florida, if I said that right. He sang with the Masters 5, the Singing Americans, and Hovey Lister, so he's got battle scars from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, but he's got crowns from who he's sang with and what he's done. Buddy, thanks for joining us this afternoon on SGMP.
Glad to be with you, man. Look forward to it.
Hey, you know, you spent the last few hours, Bill Shaw, you know, we've talked about Bill on today's show, and everybody says, well, Bill Shaw, he was a member of the SGMA Hall of Fame. We played his music a little bit. We pulled the old footage from the All-American Quartet, which don't tell me how we found that footage, but we found it, and they were out of Illinois. He sang with them before the Blackwood Brothers, and we know he's from Anderson, South Carolina. With the Statesman for 21, 22 years, thereabouts, singing tenor. And, you know, buddy, we have lost our history in a way when men like that are not honored. Don't you agree?
Yes, sir. You know, it breaks my heart, and he's gone, and there's not many in that era. Really, I don't know of anybody left.
No.
Jackie Marshall, you know, died before he. So
right.
I think everybody's gone now from that era, and it was a great era, man, and what a great man he was, and what a talent.
I've often said this. People have asked me about that era. Of course, you were a lot closer to Hovey, and I became close to Hovey before he died from the radio perspective, and talking to him and dealing with JD and Jake and all those folks. And we could do a whole show on this, and we're going to come back to do it later. But there's very few people that can give eyewitness accounts of that era other than yourself, maybe Charlie Waller or Steve Weatherford. I mean, other than that, I can't think of too many people. Am I right, now that Bill's gone?
You're right. Yeah.
And Steve told me the only reason he can do it is because he was an 8-year-old boy that was forced to be put on the bus and follow mom and daddy around. So anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you were.
He did.
You know, you were with Bill in his final moments at hospice. Tell folks about that visit, if you don't mind.
Well, Susan called us, and we were just so close with Bill. In fact, he last time we talked, he said, "I'm going to be coming down to Florida in about a week." We'd have him in our home numerous times, and Roy and Amy Pauley, and we'd all sing and just have a big time. Well, she called and told me, and I told my pastor, I said, I got to go because, you know, I want to talk to him before he crosses Old Chili Jordan. And the preacher said, well, go on. So he was talking to people and doing really good. And on our way up, my car broke down. So all of Thursday morning, my brakes and rotors were being fixed in Macon, Georgia. Well, time I got to the hospice house in Anderson that evening, Susan was real sad. She said he's quit responding. And And I thought, gosh, I missed it, boy. Well, we all were talking, and I don't know how we all got out of the room, but my wife was in there. So she just bent over and started singing Pablo, great song, that he wrote.
Yeah.
And he came to and started singing with her.
Wow.
And we went in there and for an hour just praised the Lord and had a great visit. And the doctors and nurses with hospice said they had never seen that happen, a man that was that near gone, to come back like that. And it was just a moment in time. A little bit of heaven came down, and glory filled our souls. And
right.
I wouldn't take anything in the world for it because I was so sad thinking, man, I'm going to miss talking to him and he's going to be gone. And boy, it just worked out. We're just so thrilled that it worked out like it did.
Buddy,
it was
buddy,
yeah.
What's your favorite Bill Shaw memory?
That I can tell?
Yeah. you can tell anything. We're on podcast. We're not on radio. The FCC don't govern us.
We got all kind of memories, but the greatest memories really that I have of him are the times that nobody was using him. He was out of a business. In 1999, we moved back to Alabama, and they were having a singing in Rainsville at Cat Freeman, where a fund was to help kids go to singing schools, and so we called Bill and invited him. Well, he came, and we sang, and Don Frost was there, who had idolized Bill all those years. Well, Don got reunited with him, so he had us on his show. He's done a lot of TV, all those people with Don Frost. So that started got our friendship back. We'd become close to him at Greenville, at the Grand Old Gospel Reunion. That's where we really got to know him, and I got to where I'd play for him to do his solos up there. Well, anyhow, we started singing with him, and he was just thrilled. In fact, one of the last things he said to me, he said, y'all, I credit you all because you all helped me get back singing some. And so, we've sung with him in nursing homes and everywhere. And we've got many memories. I'll tell you one memory is he's a diabetic.
Yeah.
Of course, he never paid any attention to eating sugarless stuff. He ate what he wanted to. That's the miracle of him being alive. And one of them. And so we were at Roy and Amy Pauley's. Janet and I were in one bedroom. Belle was in another one. Roy and Amy in their room. So Janet said, I think I hear Bill. So I thought, oh, Lord, it's 3 a.m. So I slipped in and opened the door to his room, and he was half in and half out of bed in one of those diabetic fits. And he was saying, Hovey, James. And I told Janet, I laughed. I said, boy, I'd like to know what's going on in his mind right now with Hovey and James. But, he didn't want you to help him, and he'd fight you. But we finally got some orange juice and stuff down him and got him out of that diabetic shock or whatever they call that. He'd been one since he was 14.
Yeah.
And one time, Bill Bailey was interviewing me. He said, what's the greatest thing you've ever seen in gospel music? I said, in my time, the grace of God. All these men have gotten right with God, and it was just thrilled you to see him praising the Lord and thanking God there in the bed in his last moments. And Bill, like many of us, he had some past past stories here and there, but I'll tell you, it's wonderful, and those moments will live on in our hearts, forever. And so we were just thrilled to be there. And Sunday they're having a funeral or a celebration of life for him. We won't be going back for that, but we were just honored to be in those last few moments there, and it was awesome.
Bill Shaw, one of the legends of gospel music as a whole, one of the legends, let's not just say of gospel music, let's say Christian music.
Here's our announcer.
And that's the statesman's leader. What's that name?
Hobie Lister. And that crisper, flakier cracker, boys, what's that name?
Premium Saltine.
Ah, you said it, so let's sing it now.
They're better baked and better wrapped. Premium Saltine. Nabisco's crackers in the inner sealed pack. Premium Saltine.
Well, you heard the music, the statesman singing about saltine crackers, and that only means one thing. Here on SGNP, my buddy from Southern Gospel Memories and Pictures on Facebook, and Southern Gospel Memories and Video on Facebook, my buddy Jeff Turner. Jeff, did I get it right today?
You got it right today, Darren. Good job.
Man, no doubt. My Braves are in first place, Jeff. Your Cardinals are making a run here at late season. You think they're going to be able to overcome the Cubs and the Brewers here to make the wild card at least?
It's going to be interesting. They got a decent lead right now in the second wild card, so we'll see.
I threw the baseball thing in there because you're a huge Cardinals fan. I'm a huge Braves fan, and we've been talking to Scott today about how he came in and took some legendary folks' spots, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But let's talk for just a moment about Southern Gospel Music Hall of Famer Bill Shaw, the oldest living member of the Hall of Fame, passed away last week, and his funeral is the 16th, I believe, or his service is the 16th. But Bill passed away, and tell our fine folks a little bit about Bill.
Well, Bill studied music at Anderson College in Anderson, South Carolina, where he was from, so he had an educated voice. In 1952, he joined the All-American Quartet, and at that time, the Blackwood brothers were on a program with them in Illinois, and James heard Bill sing and ended up hiring him shortly thereafter to replace Dan Husky. And he was with the Blackwood Brothers for 21 years up until 1973.
I'm going to take a moment here, and I'm going to play a clip. And you can get more of this clip on Southern Gospel News Podcast, the Facebook site. But I want you to hear a clip that Jeff provided to me from Bill Shaw singing with the All-American Quartet. Here he is, Bill Shaw. Man, Jeff, that's some ancient stuff, isn't it?
That's great.
It is awesome. And you know what the thing that's cool about that tape is? There's not all of this computerized fun stuff. That's just straight tape. You know what I'm saying? Just straight. You sing in the microphone, this is what you get. It's not dressed up, you know?
Straight from the 78 RPM, all the crackle and everything.
Yep, you're exactly right. Talking to Scott Fowler today, and you know Scott is from right in your area, St. Louis. His father worked at the automobile plant there in St. Louis, preached on the weekends and night, and every time he could. Scott grew up singing with them. Then he tells us the story. He's already told us a story about going down to Houston. Give us a little bit about Scott, but let's back up a little further than that, okay? We know Scott, for he's already told us, he went to Houston, then joined the Cathedrals. But, Jeff, tell the folks out there some stuff they don't know about the Cathedrals, how Scott and the Cathedrals intersected with the Weatherfords and all this fun stuff. You can explain it so much better than I can.
Well, in 1953, late 53 or early 54, Armin Morales was the bass singer for the Weatherford Quartet, and he got drafted into the Army, so they had a vacancy in their group. At that time, they hired George Yance, and George was with them through 1956. When Armin returned, he returned to his position with the quartet. Glenn Payne joined in 1957. His gospel music career was a little more extensive in that he had sung with the Stamps All-Star Quartet and the Stamps Ozark Quartet out of Wichita Falls, Texas. He joined, like I said, he joined the Weatherfords in 57 and was there until 1963.
So then they left the Weatherfords, or the Weatherfords were at the Cathedral of Tomorrow, so to speak, up in Ohio. I don't know where it's at in Ohio.
That's Akron.
Akron. They left the cathedral, and Mr. What was the pastor's name there, Jeff?
Rex Humbard.
Wanted his own quartet, and that's how the cathedrals got started, correct?
That's correct. Actually, Danny Coker, Bobby Clark, and Glenn Payne formed the Cathedral Trio, and George Yance, who had been with the Blue Ridge Quartet for several years, was added in 1964 to make the quartet.
Man alive, man alive. Everybody intersects. See, I didn't know that about Armand Morales. You know, I knew him from his days in the Imperials. I didn't realize he was with the Weatherfords. I should know more of this. We should study more of this, shouldn't we, Jeff?
Well, I've been doing it for a few years, so.
Well, man, I appreciate it. We've got to get out of here. The Cathedrals moved on down. They formed Legacy 5. Legacy 5 was formed by Roger and Scott. Roger Bennett, of course, the late pianist and MC and part-time lead singer for the Cathedrals, and all that good stuff was a good thing. And, you know, Scott said they've been around 18 years with Legacy 5. Doesn't seem that long, does it?
No, it doesn't.
So they've
top-notch group.
What's that?
I said they were a top-notch group and still are.
Top-notch and professional as it can be. Jeff, as always, thank you, my friend. We look forward to talking to you next week. All righty?
Thanks, Darren.
All right, buddy.
For a snack. Premium salty. Nabisco's crackers in the inner seal pack. Premium salty.
Hey, I'm Karen Peck Gooch with Karen Peckany River, and you're listening to the best in gospel music right here on SGNP.
And welcome to SGNP. Darren Sutherland on the line with lead singer, baritone, whatever he wants to be, because he is the boss. Legacy 5, Scott Fowler. Scott, how you doing this afternoon, my friend?
Hey, Darren, I'm doing well today. Thank you. You
Good.
doing okay?
You know what? It's still in the upper 80s around here in metro Atlanta, and I hadn't had to get in traffic this afternoon yet, but, you know, hey, the great thing about traffic is it gives folks the opportunity to listen to podcasts and conversations with great folks like you is what I tell folks.
Well, there you go.
There you go. So, Scott, Legacy 5, I mean, let's just talk plain, my friend. It doesn't, to me, you know, I've been a gospel music fan now 30 years. I'm 48 years old. It doesn't seem like Legacy 5 has been around that long because the Cathedrals, which you were a part of, the heyday, were such a big part of my young life. But how long has Legacy 5 been in existence and going nowadays? Because you guys have had some great success, no doubt.
Yeah, man, it does. It is hard to believe. I mean, we started in January of 2000, and so we're coming up on our 20th year anniversary, believe it or not.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I spent the last 10 years that the Cathedrals traveled. I was really there the last 9 years, and so all the decade of the 90s, and they, of course, retired in December of 1999. And then I started Legacy 5 in January of 2000. So nearly 10 years with Cathedrals, 20 years with Legacy 5, a couple years before the Cathedrals with a group out of Texas called The Sound. And all of a sudden, I've been doing this 30 years. It's hard to believe.
And just think, you've only got 30 more to go. What about that?
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
catch up with some of the old timers.
That's right. You know, now, when you first started on the Gaither videos back in the day, you got to sit on the top of the choir loft. Now you're going to be in one of those bottom chairs before long, my friend.
Yeah, hey, man, you never know. That the epitome of the pinnacle of your success is when Gaither puts you in a big, wide, comfortable chair right behind the piano. So you never know.
That's it. Scott, did you always want to grow up singing gospel music?
You know, the truth is, Darren, I always loved music, and I was always involved in it, whether it was with my family, my dad and mom singing at church before Dad would preach, and then by the time I got to junior high and high school where you could kind of elect some of the classes you wanted to take, and I elected for every class that was available that involved singing. So I've always loved it and always wanted to do it. Honestly, I didn't know that you could do it for a living. The people that I knew that sang, I think I just assumed that they just kind of did it for fun, and I didn't know that that's actually how they made their living. And so when I discovered that actually there are people that do that, I immediately said, man, what better life in the world could there be than being able to make your living doing something that you love to do?
Yeah.
And frankly, doing something that you feel like, God has put in you that you enjoy, and it's kind of how you connect with yourself, kind of how you connect with others, kind of how I connect with God. And so the first opportunity I got to go sing and actually earn a living doing it, I left. I was enrolled in nursing school, of all things, in St. Louis, Missouri. And I was finishing up my second year of nursing school, and I got the opportunity to go sing with that group in Texas called The Sound. And man, I closed those nursing books so fast and left St. Louis and flew and moved to Houston, Texas. And that's where I stayed for 2.5 years until I got my job with the Cathedrals. And man, I've never looked back. It's been a wonderful life. I have had a great life and been able to enjoy this music that I love so much.
Scott, where are you from originally?
I grew up in St. Louis. And so
that makes you a Cardinals fan, whether you're a Cardinals fan or not. Am I correct?
Man, it does. And I was. I lived there in the 80s, and that was back in the day when they had a great club then with Ozzie Smith and those kind of guys. And I was there and got to see several games in the World Series. They called it the I-70 series.
Yeah.
It was when St. Louis and Kansas City were paired up. And the only thing that separated the two cities was a couple hundred miles of I-70, so they called it the I-70 series. And I actually went to a couple of those games. It was fun.
I remember y'all had a picture at that time. I think it was Joaquin Andahar. He pitched He pitched that seventh game and went crazy, and I think they kicked him out of the game. Was Whitey still managing the Cardinals back then? Do you recall? I know
he was. Yeah, Whitey Herzog was managing, and Joaquin Andahar. I can't believe you knew him. He was my favorite pitcher on the team, and so yeah, man, that was back. Now that we're older, that's what we call back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I can name your whole infield and half your outfield. We're not doing a sports show, but you had Keith Hernandez at first, Tommy Hurt second.
That's right.
Tommy
Hurt second.
Ozzie at short. Ken Oberfelk at third. Darrell Porter behind the plate.
Darrell Porter, pitcher, yeah. And that relief pitcher, Bruce Suter. Who came to Atlanta.
Very good. Who came down here to us in Atlanta. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he came to Atlanta. His last 2 years got hurt and got a big contract, $40 million. Wouldn't it be nice to get one of those big contracts like that and never have to pitch again?
Just one time, just one contract like that. That's all I need.
That's it. That's it. Growing up in St. Louis, your dad was a pastor. What type of church? What affiliation was he? And
my dad was a General Baptist pastor. Now he was bivocational. So for those who don't know what that means, it means he pastored such a small church they couldn't afford to pay him full time.
Right. So he worked 5 or 6 days a week and preached on Sundays and Wednesdays.
Exactly. And Dad's job was there in St. Louis at there's a General Motors plant there at the time called Fisher Body.
Yeah.
And Dad worked on the assembly line at that automobile factory and pastored on the weekends and during the week and taught Sunday school. And you know those little churches, man, the pastor kind of has to wear several hats, and that's the kind of life I grew up in.
You know what, friend? I grew up the very same way with pastors, the same way I worked at Ford on the assembly line. And a lot of times when I look at it now, and you see behind the veil, just like we see behind the veil, so to speak. And when I mention see behind the veil, we see behind the business of church. And we look back at folks like your dad, and we look back at folks like my uncles and folks that pastored like that. It gives you a new respect for them because it wasn't, how do we say this? It was for the love of the people, not saying that these major pastors do, but they had no other incentive other than to see folks saved and grow in grace.
Yeah. I mean, the incentive certainly wasn't financial. There was very little financial aspect to it. It absolutely was for the love of the ministry, for the love of the people. Did it because they loved it, and even going back to what I do, Darren, I feel like God equips you to love what it is that He's going to require you to do in life.
Yeah,
and so Dad loved pastoring. I loved singing, and I think I tell young people all the time. They say, how do how do I know what, maybe what God wants me to do, or, kind of where my life's journey is going to take me. And my own experience has been, and what I tell people is, what do you love? What is your passion? Where is your heart always going? And chances are that's birthed in you from your Creator, and He is creating in you a love for what you're going to do with your life.
Yeah.
And so you're right, man. Those pastors, they pastored for the love of the people and the ministry. And you're right, they did it for no other reason, because they couldn't support their families on it. They worked 40-hour-a-week jobs, and then a lot of them still worked 20 or 30 hours at the church.
Yeah, and preached revivals,
Absolutely.
and had prayer meeting at work during lunch hours with each other and all kind of stuff. So,
well, that's how I got my start singing. Is Dad would go preach revivals at other churches.
Yeah,
and me and Mom, of course, would go with him, and Dad would get his guitar out, and me and Mom and Dad would, sing 3 or 4 songs before Dad would preach. I mean, that's my earliest recollection as a singer, singing in church during Dad's revivals at other churches he was holding. So, man, my life. You already know what I'm about, man. You've lived it.
Hey, but it was a good life, was it not? It was
absolutely.
It was a simpler time. You knew at 5 o'clock you were going to get home and eat dinner. Then you were going to take a shower because you wanted to be outside in the yard playing sports or doing something fun, but you had to get ready for church. And there was that little 30-minute time before church started and the 30 minutes after before you got in the car that you might get to talk to your buddies or get sweet on a girl or something like that we won't talk about today.
Right.
Scott, I would be remiss today. I would be remiss today if I didn't ask you, I mean, the greatest quartet, arguably, I have to say the word arguably, I will say one of the greatest 2 quartets of all time, the Cathedrals and the Statesmen. You get a call from, I'm assuming, George or Glenn One or their office asking you to try out for the baritone part. What's going through your mind? How did that transpire, my friend?
This is actually a fun story. It's a funny story. I went to college with Ernie. For a year in Indiana. That's where we met. Ernie Haas and I met in college.
Yeah.
And we sang in a little college group there that the school had called Earthlight. And then Ernie got a job singing with Squire Parsons in Redeemed. So Ernie quit college and left, and I was happy for him, but I was envious as well because Ernie was getting to do what I wanted to do. And so I would beg him, Ernie, please find me a job, get me a job singing somewhere. Please help your college buddy out. And so we stayed in touch, and Ernie left Squire Parsons and Redeemed when he got his job with the Cathedrals. So one day my phone rings in St. Louis, and I think Ernie was still singing with Squire at the time. And it's back, you'll remember this, it was before cell phones. And it's back when you could place a collect call where someone had to pay the charges, for your long distance call. And you
sure that wasn't Claude Hopper calling you, Scott?
Yeah, exactly. So my phone rings and I answer it, and the operator says, "I have a collect call to Scott Fowler from Eldritch Fox." Now, Eldritch Fox was the owner and manager of the Kingsmen Quartet.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, it's kind of weird that he would call me collect, but whatever, and they say, will you accept the charges? Yeah. And I said, yes. And so this voice comes on the other end and says, Scott, this is Eldritch Fox with the Kingsmen. I've been kind of paying attention to you and watching you, and I love your voice. And I would love to have you come sing with the Kingsmen. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah.
Well, I just fell hook, line, and sinker,
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Fox, yes. Yeah, I would love to sing. I've loved the Kingsmen all my life, and on and on. And then I hear this raucous laughter in the background.
Yeah.
And then I recognize it as Ernie. And that joker had called the operator and said, my name's Eldritch Fox. I want to place a collect call to Scott Fowler. I mean, he got me good.
Yeah.
So now fast forward a year.
Okay.
I'm singing in the Sound in Houston, Texas, and my phone rings one morning, wakes me up about 7:30 in the morning. And on the other end of the phone, I hear, is this Scott Fowler? I said, yes, it is. He said, Scott, this is Glenn Payne with the Cathedral Quartet. And my exact words were, yeah, right, Ernie, nice try. and it really was Glenn Payne.
Nice.
So, yeah, Ernie got me twice and only meant to get me once, So
that's
how it happened. And Glenn just told me that Mark had turned in his resignation and that my name had come up and would I want to audition for the Cathedrals. And so, man, that was it. I flew to Odessa, Texas a week later when they were there, and I auditioned for them. And that day they offered me the job, and that's where I spent the next nearly 10 years of my life.
It's no secret that George and the Cathedrals reunion is quoted in saying about Mark Trammell, ladies and gentlemen, he sang with the Cathedrals, he sang with the Kingsmen, he's been, this is prior to his Gold City years, but he was with the Gold City when y'all did the reunion tour. He quoted and said, Mark Trammell's the greatest quartet man of all time, okay?
Yeah.
We've talked about baseball already, okay? When you replace a player in Atlanta like Del Murphy, or in St. Louis like Ozzie Smith, or in New York like Mickey Mantle, the player that comes in behind them has a ton of weight and pressure put on their shoulders that is unbelievable, okay? When you came in to sing with the Cathedrals, once Trammell was gone, did you feel pressure at all? I mean, was it tough at first? Or were you just so naive that you really didn't realize it was pressure, you just wanted to sing?
Well, I think, Darren, the pressure that I felt was just knowing that just being a cathedral was pressure enough for someone, a kid. I was 24 years old, and truly, I mean, I don't mean this with any false sense of humility, but I was in over my head. I really was, and I don't feel like I had enough. I had only been singing, quote, professionally for 2.5 years. And, I didn't have much time to get ready to be a cathedral.
Right.
And so I think the most of the pressure I felt was just knowing, man, I gotta really bring up, I'm at a different level here,
You went from the Double-A to the major leagues overnight is what happened, in a sense. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And George and Glenn were just so good at welcoming you, making you feel comfortable, trying to put you at ease. And frankly, George was a master at, selling you on the platform, making you, make a hit, if you will, endearing you to the people is really a better way of saying it. He was a master at that. The weight that I did feel was knowing how I feel when Cathedrals were my favorite group. So I remember when Danny Funderburk left, I was mad.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, man, this is my favorite group. This is my favorite lineup. This is my favorite tenor. He's leaving and it's messing everything up, was how I looked at it. It was messing everything up for me because it's messing up my favorite group. And so I just remember thinking, when Mark leaves, if people have the attitude kind of that I had, man, Mark's leaving, it's messing up my favorite group. That's the pressure I felt. It really was, are people going to warm up to me because I could be viewed as the kid that came in that messed up their favorite group,
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, people don't feel that way, or if they do, they don't express it, and then you've got time to hopefully that you'll start growing on those folks. But again, George was just a master at making the people want to pull for you,
Right. We could sit and we could talk about the Cathedrals all day long and do a documentary and still not be able to tell the story in 45 minutes or even 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So we'll come back to that at another time. But give me, I'm gonna mention both these names. You know what two names I'm going to mention? Give me 60 seconds of insight from Scott Fowler about them, and then we'll move on a little bit because people want to know the insight that two of the greatest that ever sang. We'll start off with Glenn Payne.
Glenn Payne, a man of great character, honesty, integrity. If he told you it was Easter, you better start looking for the eggs that the bunny has hidden, you know?
Wow.
I mean, if he said it was true. And if he ever, he was always a big enough man. If he ever felt like maybe he had jumped on you too hard about something that really wasn't warranted, at one time he jumped on me, and then he came back an hour later and said, with tears in his eyes, and said, "I couldn't go to sleep tonight thinking I had hurt your feelings." And that's just the kind of man he was. And so you always knew with Glenn, he was going to speak his mind, but he was going to try to do it kindly. Mm-hmm. And if he ever felt like he wasn't kind about it, it broke his heart, and he would come to you in tears and say, "Please forgive me for how I handled that." Wow. And in 10 years, I had one of those instances, and I'll tell you what it was.
Go ahead.
Right after we got our pictures taken for a new picture, I changed my hairstyle. And, you know, I just didn't even think about it. And so when I walked on the bus and I had a little bit of a different hairstyle, he said, thanks for ruining our new pictures that we just had made that I spent $1,000 on." You know, and I just hadn't thought about it, and it makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, you don't do that, you know.
Yeah.
Or if you want to, ask first if it's okay. And so I said, "Man, I'm sorry, I didn't even think about that. I'll go back to the style it was in the pictures."
Right.
And then he came to me an hour later in tears and said, "Man, if I hurt your feelings with that, I'm sorry." You know, that's just the kind of guy he was. But that was more than 60 seconds, and I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine because it's great. But you know what? Glenn understood brand before brand was a key word. You follow what I'm saying?
Man, that's a great point. Yeah.
I mean, think about this, and I've often said this about the older generations of performers. Did you ever see Hovey Lister without a suit and tie?
Nope.
Have you ever seen Jeanette Cook with the Singing Cooks without the huge corsage and a big hat, for the lack of a better word?
Nope.
Have you ever seen Peg McCamey sing on stage without a beautiful dress?
No.
See, those folks, they come from three different backgrounds. George and Glenn were the same way, but they knew what brand was before brand was a key word. Even the Kingsmen, ton of fun. You would have never fit in because you wasn't overweight and fat. Just like I tell Arthur all the time, he didn't fit in because he was string bean. But you follow what I'm saying.
Right.
I mean,
Sure.
same way. They understood what brand was. And a lot of groups today are so interested in manufacturing brand that they lose their identity because it's we could talk about that all day long.
Oh my, now you've gone to preaching.
Yeah, I know it. Let's
Are you a
move
bivocational preacher?
No, not at all. I'm a radio and advertising guy. That's where I'm at. Same question. George Yance.
George, the consummate professional. George, I would watch him stay up late at night on the bus, singing to himself, trying to master his craft, trying to find placement for certain words that were giving him trouble, or certain notes that were giving him trouble on a new song that we had just learned. And he would sit up in the front of the bus when everybody else had gone to bed. He would sit up there and just quietly sing, trying to find the placement for where he could be comfortable. And I had seen him sit up at night and just staring into space and not saying a word. And I remember a couple of times I would ask him, "Hey man, I'm just curious, what are you thinking about? Because I can tell you're thinking." And he said, "Scott, I told a joke tonight that didn't work. and I'm trying to figure out why it didn't work. What did I do wrong? How was my timing off? Why it didn't work? And he said, why that's important to me is because if I want people to listen intently at the end of the concert to the message, I got to first put them at ease with humor. And he said, if I fail at my humor, they may not pay attention to me at the end of the night when I want to talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
And so he would sit up and analyze himself every night and ask himself, how can I make this better? And George never stopped learning. He never stopped trying to be better at what he did. And so I just always respected that in him. He was never complacent with mediocrity, ever.
That's what made him the best, though. That's what made him the best.
That's right. That's why he was the best.
When you started and you realized George and Glenn were going to retire, and I'm sure y'all had a conversation, and we'll go over that another time, and you decided to start Legacy 5, you partnered with your good friend and pianist
Roger Bennett.
Roger Bennett, right. I got caught between a rock and a hard place here. You ever just have a brain freeze? I mean,
oh, yeah.
So you partnered
and
with
I knew you were having one,
yes,
so
sir.
I came to your
there
rescue,
you
buddy,
did.
and helped you.
I appreciate that. Usually
No problem.
Arthur does that for me. But anyway.
Right.
You partnered with Roger. I remember the fanfare in which y'all started with and the great group that you had and everything that surrounded that. Then a short time later, Roger, for those that don't know, Roger passed away with cancer.
Right.
From a personal side, I will tell you my daughter fought cancer this past year and overcame it. Scott.
Wonderful.
Roger had overcome cancer, I believe, before y'all started Legacy 5. Am I not correct? Or was that?
Yeah, he went in and out of remission several times. That's right.
Yeah. You start Legacy 5. You built it. Roger is an excellent MC, an excellent speaker on stage. Then all of a sudden you realize, for lack of a better word, Roger may not be there very much longer. You've got to take the mantle, Scott. Okay?
Yeah.
What are you going through at that point of your career?
Yeah, those were real rough days, Darren, for a lot of reasons. Number one, my best friend in the world is dying.
Yeah.
And it's evident that he's dying. And there's not a thing in the world I can do to fix that. So, not only professionally are you losing, are you losing in a lot of ways the face of Legacy 5. And such a big personality that Roger was. So professionally, you're losing. I mean, you're using your most valuable player.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm losing my best friend.
Yeah.
So it was really, really hard. I ain't gonna lie to you. It was really difficult. Had some really, really tough times. He went in and out of remission several times, had 3 bone marrow transplants. Every time he had a bone marrow transplant, he was off the road for a minimum of 100 days. So we would go from having Roger to not having Roger for 100 days. And, the program was always in flux. And even when he would come back, you never knew if he was going to be there for 3 weeks or if he was going to be there 2 weeks and then have to be off a week. His fever would spike. He wouldn't get on stage. You never knew what group was going to walk out on stage.
Wow.
And so it was very difficult times. It really was.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, thankfully, when you're in the midst of all of that, it seems like it's going to last forever. And somehow, God just gives you the strength for the moment. I'm not going to say that I wasn't discouraged a lot of that time.
Yeah.
But the Bible says when you've done all you can do to stand, just stand.
Yeah.
It doesn't say move forward. It doesn't say, back up. It's when you don't know anything else to do, sometimes you just got to stand.
Wow.
And let the storm swirl around you and just stand and wait it all out. And if you are doing what God wants you to do, he'll make it happen. He will make a way. You will survive it. And that's what I did, man. I told people, during the time, I said, I feel like I'm just dog paddling.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to stay afloat. I'm not able to plan anything too far in the future because I don't know what's going on with Roger. I just feel like I'm dog paddling. And, if I just don't drown, maybe one day I can actually start swimming again.
Hopefully.
And, of course, that day comes.
Yep. Hopefully this question's not too personal. If it is, we'll edit it out and edit this whole part out. What's the last conversation you had with Roger?
The best of my recollection, the last conversation that I had with Roger was, Roger never talked about dying. Mm-hmm. He never talked. He never talked about, man, I'm giving up. This obviously ain't working. He just never had those conversations. He was always very positive, very upbeat. One of the last conversations I remember having with him was one where he said, "Okay, buddy, we're best friends. I'm not even saying this to Debbie, my wife, because I don't ever want her to hear these words from me. But, dude, I'm dying, and it's obvious now. I'm not going to get better." And he said, "Just promise me you'll do whatever you can when the time comes to help Debbie and the kids, and promise me that you'll keep going with Legacy 5, and this is part of my legacy. And if you don't run with it and keep going, what I've spent so much of my life building and pouring myself into is going to die, and it doesn't need to die just because I die."
Wow.
And so, yeah, so I said, "Raj, buddy, I'll do everything I can on both of those fronts." And, it was just one of those surreal moments where,
right.
There's really nothing you can say except I love you, and I'll do everything I can to honor those requests for you.
Before we started this interview, I said, "Scott, we're going to talk more personal. We're not going to talk about gospel music." And it seems like we talked about everything gospel music, not personal. But I'm sitting here translating, and I'm thinking, okay, here this guy is. Let's just put it in baseball terms like we brought it up when we started. Here this guy is playing Double-A baseball. They bring him to the Yankees. He gets to play with the superstars, the Babe Ruths, the Joe DiMaggios of the world, okay? Then all of a sudden he partners with Lou Gehrig and goes through same thing Lou went through. He had to give up baseball because of his sickness. He goes through that with Roger, but yet you've kept going, and Legacy 5 year after year after year has been consistent. And if it hadn't have been for those three guys and other guys around you, do you think you would have had that consistency as you've moved forward?
Man, that's a great question, too, and great insight, because I tell people, all the time that, George and Glenn and even Roger, that's the university I went to.
Yeah.
The Cathedral University. And George and Glenn instilled a lot of those values into me. But my parents did as well. My grandparents, my dad and my grandpa, my two favorite people ever are my dad and my grandfather. And they were both just great men. And I've always been around strong men, strong leaders, people of great integrity. And so with my dad and my grandfather and George and Glenn and Roger, not only, and my dad died when I was 18. I mean, I watched him go through the same type of stuff that Roger went through.
Yeah.
And these guys there, not only did they show me how to live, they showed me how to die.
Wow.
I mean, they died with great honor, great integrity, great men of God with great faith. I mean, I have had some excellent examples.
Nice.
And so I just feel blessed to to have been around people that could show me how to live, and how to do it right. And so I just feel
you're a blessed man. You're a blessed man.
I am.
If you never sang a note and you had that kind of influence in your life.
Absolutely.
If we walked out to your car today, okay, and we hit one of the presets on the radio, what's Scott Fowler listening to right now?
Well, if you push button number 1, it's going to go to Fox News on the satellite.
Yeah.
So that's always one of my options.
You can say Steve Perry or Def Leppard. We've had people say that before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Station number 2 is the adult contemporary classic rock type station that you would hear where you'd hear Michael Bolton, and you would hear Whitney Houston. I'm showing my age, but I like that 80s type music.
Right.
And then you go over one more, and you're going to get the satellite network Enlighten.
Yeah.
Where they're going to play all of it, and then you're also going to get a local station here. The Fish, the contemporary Christian station.
Kevin Anderson guys up here. Yep, no doubt.
Yeah, and so about the only kind of music that you're not going to hear me listening to is just I don't like the hard rock stuff. I don't like rap.
Yeah.
Most country music I don't like. I like the classic country. I don't much care for the current country music.
Yeah.
But I have a wide range of musical tastes.
Nice. One secular artist you would love to hear sing a gospel song just for voice alone.
Well, one I have. I would love to have heard him live sometime. Believe it or not, Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
I loved to listen to him as a kid. I would put his records on.
Yeah.
And my biggest fascination was hearing the Jordanaires sing behind him.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things how I know that I was meant for quartet music, because when Elvis would sing "How Great Thou Art," and then he would say, "Take it, Jordanaires," and they would sing "When Christ Shall Come."
Yeah.
It would put chill bumps all over my body. And so I loved hearing Elvis sing the gospel stuff.
Nice.
A secular artist that I have never heard sing a gospel song that I feel like I would love to hear sing a gospel song would be the Eagles.
Oh yeah,
they had such great harmony.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I was a big country music fan, so when Gaither did the tape with Alabama. Okay. I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is like my worlds are colliding because I'm in that sage age group. Or when you heard Whitney Houston sing in what's that movie she did? The Preacher's Wife.
Yeah. Yes.
And she did that Squire Parsons song that Squire's still thankful that she did today because the royalty checks are still rolling in from Whitney. But having a fun thing there. 18 years of Legacy 5. What's next? What's next for Legacy 5, Scott?
Man, who knows? We go next year, like I said, we go into our 20th year anniversary.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
No, that's no problem.
Yeah.
If you had asked me 10 years ago what's in store for Legacy 5 in the next 10 years, I wouldn't have been able to tell you, and I still can't tell you. I will just tell you that as long as I have a voice and as long as I feel like this is what God wants me to do, I'm going to keep trying to make great music that can influence the lives of people and that can touch the heart that maybe needs to hear the gospel and won't hear it any other way. Our mission has always been the same. Let folks know that Jesus is right for whatever's wrong in their lives.
Scott, because of you and I have one personal connection, we got to mention his name on this podcast because he's not doing too well in health right now, but he's a friend of both of ours. Rollo Green here in Marietta, Georgia, where we do this show. And do me a favor, throw a shout-out out there to Rollo when he listens to this. He'll be happy.
Well, you know Rollo. I mean, you got to love Rollo. But my earliest memories of coming to Roswell Street with Legacy 5 was of Rollo.
Yeah.
And his wife, she would bring us homemade baked bread
Miss
that she
Gail.
spent all day baking. Yes, just salt of the earth people, and they would bring their grandson, and they were very faithful to try to influence him with gospel music, and just good folks. And so, Rollo, I love you, buddy. You're one of my favorites.
Scott, thank you for your time today. We'll get back with you. Look forward to making a personal introduction later this month up at NQC with you. And thank you for taking 35 minutes out of your day and talking to us a little bit. All righty, my friend?
You're so welcome, Darren. We'll see you soon. Thanks for what you do, by the way. Appreciate your involvement in gospel music.
Toccoa Falls College in Toccoa Falls, Georgia. Since 1907, TFC, glorifying God through seeking and developing leaders who will impact the world for Jesus Christ. More information on TFC, call 706-886-7299 or visit them online at tfc.edu. That's tfc.edu.
And welcome back to SGNP. Great information from Scott. Arthur, Scott took a different route, so to speak, with gospel music, going to the sound down in Houston, as he talked about, and you talked about earlier, then going to the cathedrals. I thought one of the funny things he talked about in the interview was how he said Glenn, even though when he got on them or chastised them, maybe that's not the right word, but or corrected them young guys, he would always do it in love. And he always noticed how George, and the thing about that he's learned being a professional, is George would sit on the bus at night and go over his jokes and go over his lines as an MC, because he recalled that some of them didn't go over as well, and he wanted to improve. And George was one of the best, if not the best, there ever was.
Oh, yeah.
When you talk MCs, I mean, you're talking Jim Hamill, Hovey Lister, Bill Gaither, George Ontz. I mean, those guys are all right there at the top. But the fact that most of us who are fans just sit back and think, wow, George Ontz practiced what he said. It didn't just come natural. That amazes folks, does it not?
Yeah, it really does. And that just goes to show you, what a professional he was. He wanted it to be the best. And talking, I'm telling you, it's tough doing the MC work and keeping it fresh and funny and keeping it moving and serious when it needs to be, and it's tough, man. It really is.
Hey, did you ever have a chance to sing with George or Glenn?
Not real. Well, kind of, sorta. Here and there, and different things. Along the way, different performances, that sort of thing. As far as just singing with them, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
But they were, so what I tell you, when I first started, one of the places we sang when I was with the Kingsmen was in Columbia, South Carolina, and we were with the cathedrals. And when I first came with them, we worked a lot with the cathedrals. That was kind of back before the cathedrals kind of took that, kind of went their separate way, kind of doing a lot of the churches and that sort of thing. And they kind of stopped doing a lot of the concerts together. Mm-hmm. And we did work a lot together. And I'm telling you, George and Glenn were so encouraging to me. And I never forget the first time I ever met Glenn was I'd come off the stage and I'd sung something and walking by him, and he stopped me and we talked for a little bit, and he went, "Boy, you sure can sell a song." That was just really good. And I thought, man, what a compliment coming from him. I mean, he was the ultimate,
That's it.
And they were just great supporters and great encouragers.
Great support, great guys. I had the opportunity to talk to George one time years ago, and just a tremendous fellow. Arthur, before we close out today, we want to remind everybody to check out our Facebook site, Southern Gospel News Podcast, our website, www.southerngospelnewspodcast.com. It's just that simple, where you can see our social media rankings. We are the audible and social media voice of gospel music. You can always look at us on Twitter at SGNP Podcast. And now we've got an Instagram. Instagram at Southern Gospel News Podcast. And if you think Southern Gospel fans don't follow Instagram, you'll be shocked. Next week, Arthur, we talk with a dear friend of yours, Chris White, President, CEO of Crossroads Media and Marketing, also head of your label, Sunlight and Horizon. And he talks about the changes in gospel music. And no doubt you've seen a few changes, and Chris has, and we'll explore that. You ready?
Yeah.
You ready, my friend?
Absolutely. That's going to be fun.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Be good up there in Pigeon Forge this week. Will you do that?
We'll do it. We'll do it.
Arthur, got one question before we close out. You know what that is, don't you?
That's right. What's wrong with living right anyways?
Not one thing. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Hey, this is Tim Newton with SGNP, Southern Gospel News Podcast. We would love to have your group uploaded on our concert calendar page. Just simply email me at tnewton@bgadgroup.com to have all your concert and events promoted on our concert calendar page. This will be a huge boost in promoting your concerts and special events. Don't wait. Email me now at tnewton@bgadgroup.com and take advantage of this great opportunity. And hey, remember, what's wrong with living right anyway?
Paul Belcher Concerts Battle of Songs returns to the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Saturday, November 10th, 6:30 p.m. with the Hoppers. The Triumphant Quartet. Saved by grace. I've been saved by grace. The Guardians. Somebody prays and heaven pays attention. And the Jordan Family Band. My God is faithful. Tickets on sale now. Call 800-745-3000 or at the Memorial Auditorium box office. The Hoppers, the Triumphant Quartet, the Guardians, and the Jordan Family Band. Saturday, November 10th, 6:30 p.m. at the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Get more details now at paulbelcherconcerts.com.
Gospel music's largest annual event, the National Quartet Convention, is returning to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. See the Hoppers, Greater Vision, the Mark Trammell Quartet, Jim Brady Trio, Triumphant, Kingdom Heirs, Ernie Hassan Signature Sound, the Isaacs, Jason Craft, the Gaither Vocal Band, and many more of your favorites all in one amazing week, all in one amazing place, the LeConte Convention Center in Pigeon Forge. Plus showcases including the Singing News Fan Awards, Gaither Homecoming Celebration, and Gerald Wolf's Hymn Sing. And speakers Dr. Robert Jeffress and Dr. David Jeremiah. The National Quartet Convention. See the entire schedule, get travel info including vacation packages and hotel information, and get your seats now at nqconline.com. That's nqconline.com. Or call 1-800-846-8499. That's 1-800-846-8499 for the National Quartet Convention 2018 at the LeConte Center in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, September 23rd through 29th. nqconline.com.
Paul Belcher Concerts Battle of Songs returns to the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Saturday, November 10th, 6:30 p.m. with the Hoppers. The Triumphant Quartet. Saved by grace. I've been saved by grace. The Guardians. Somebody prays and heaven pays attention. And the Jordan Family Band. My God is faithful. Tickets on sale now. Call 800-745-3000 or at the Memorial Auditorium box office. The Hoppers, the Triumphant Quartet, the Guardians, and the Jordan Family Band. Saturday, November 10th, 6:30 p.m. at the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Get more details now at paulbelcherconcerts.com.
SGNP is excited you chose to listen today. If you'd kindly leave a remark and rating in the podcast remarks section, we surely would appreciate it. Please share with a friend or family member. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and our new website, southerngospelnewspodcast.com. To advertise your products, services, concert event, or new project on SGNP and reach a 100% guaranteed number of people in your area, call Tim Newton at 770-874-3200 or email him today, tnewton@bgadgroup.com. Let us geo-target our ads for you, something radio nor magazine can do.
Hey, this is Darren Sutherland. Before I close, I want to thank our affiliates out there. WLJA in North Georgia, KWFC in Springdale, Arkansas. The new one, The Andrew Burnett Show, heard all across the country, and online, TheLightAtlanta.com, playing Southern gospel music online. We're adding affiliates every day. We're partnering with Ken and the folks over there at Gospel Music TV real soon. So we look forward to that partnership. If your gospel music entity would love to partner with SGMP, get a hold of us. It's real simple. Folks, here's the deal. We've reached out to literally every form of media in gospel music. If we've missed you, I'm sorry. But we've had great partnerships with folks like Paul Heil and others. If you haven't heard someone on the air, it's not because we hadn't reached out. We hope everyone is successful, no matter if they're a radio station, a magazine, a website, a group, whomever it is. God bless you, and let's make gospel music better than it was today, tomorrow. Easy enough?